2024 Voice of the Workplace report. Managers are the problem and the solution. Could
That's
you
right.
delve into that a little bit?
People will leave managers. They very rarely leave their team, the brand, company, etc. But they'll leave a manager. They'll also stay for a manager in terms of, I'm here for you. I love working with you. You invest in me. And so you see the pros and cons of, of management and the cause and solution of the issues that managers can both facilitate in terms of, here's how you create a really healthy environment, which I'll talk about here in a second. And the things that managers do where, if it's conscious or unconscious, that can really drag individuals and a team down. And I think about some of these things that I always encourage organizations to do, which is one, recognize that no one was born into managing. Like I always, when I talk to people who are managing for the first time, I always tell them like, hey, do you want to hear about all the stuff I've gotten right over the years? Or do you want to hear about the stuff I messed up early in my career? And they're like, oh, tell us about the stuff you messed up. Because I messed a lot of stuff up when I was a first time manager.
Yeah.
And I think, again, from like to your point on the vulnerability of just being able to say, yeah, I messed all this stuff up. And I'd love it if I could help you in even some small way avoid the magnitude or the issue that I stumbled into. It was like not realizing simple things like cross-cultural, meaning US to other country, time zones, ways of working, ways of communicating, the power of just showing up and not just being on an email or I don't even remember what the tool was. It wasn't Zoom back then. We'll just call it WebEx or something. How you actually recognize the power of the words you use. And when you engage different individuals in different environments, the space that you have to leave for people to answer or to feel comfortable with you, and even offering what could be in their version, a really tough piece of feedback, but for, people that are, from the US or from different culture, company cultures of, oh, that wasn't direct enough, I missed it. Like listening for the cues and things like that, man, if you don't listen for those simple things or take the time to show up or take the time to really seek to understand, you can miss so many things and then build your operating model on that and then realize how wildly divergent you are from what your team was actually saying, what they actually needed and things like that. Like, just those examples of, me really, really messing it up and going down paths that I was like, I'm definitely on the right path. And then finding out sort of the hard way, you're like, I'm definitely not on the right path. And luckily having people around me to course correct. And, to also say like having mentors around me that some of those powerful things I've had from someone who's still my mentor is just stop it. And I was just like spinning on these things about teams and projects and work and stress. And she was like, just stop it. No one else is thinking about this. You are going way into your own head down a rabbit hole that if you're not careful, you will not be able to recover from.
Yeah.
Pull back, and it was one of those things that I always remind myself. And so that's where I tell people leaders, I'm like, there's simple things you can do, like being empathetic. All you have to do sometimes, and we talk about this a lot at Calm, which is, how are you doing? No, really, how are you doing? Because if I say, hey, Chris, how's it going? And be like, I'm fine, man. And I'm like, great, man. And we just keep going. And you might not be fine.
Yeah.
And you're like, I'm fine, man. I'm like, no, really, how are you doing? Like, we started a little late today. This. Or you might just totally be fine. You're like, I'm actually really good, but I really appreciate that you asked me a little bit more than just the surface level. And that way you can build just in those simple tools, the ability to give someone the space to say like, yeah, I'm actually not okay today. Or, hey, I actually am okay, but when I'm not, I at least know you're someone who will bother to ask, and then I can come to you with it. And then you sort of build on that with like how frequently you check in, how you go about, knowing the difference between checking in and micromanaging. I'm always a fan of telling people, I'm like, listen, I won't be over your shoulder tapping you going, oh, I want it red, not blue. I want to make sure I understand like where you need me, where you don't need me, where you say, hey, Scott, I've got you to focus on that thing over there, move that rock. I've got this thing over here. And just knowing that as more frequently that you check in and the more you learn how you work together, it's really important to do that. Like we talked about with like, going on PTO and things like that, making sure that you're leading with that and saying, hey, everybody, I'm taking this Friday off. I'm going to be offline. My husband and I are going to go do this. And that way you're doing it and saying like, hey, I'm offline, to the extent of someone is saying like, hey, I've got the same thing, or I'm going to leave at 3:00 to go to the kids' play. you recognize and respect that. So it's just like, hey, I'm going to give you that space and that time because we're giving it to each other. And then really just thinking about the way that the overall organization invests in managers. And again, like I said earlier, knowing that no one is born into managing, no one knows automatically how to do it. And really the grace that new managers need, where it's just like, hey, I know you're excited and I know you want to prove to me that you're like, I got this. At some point you won't got this. And it's okay. Come to me as your boss, go to your HR partner, go to someone that you trust in the organization as a mentor and say, I don't got it and I need some extra help. And it's in that vulnerability and time and the coaching that really I'd like to think, I'm at least a much better manager than I was 15 years ago, and being able to say, gosh, I'm really glad I had those stumbling blocks pretty early on so that I could say I stumbled and I fell down and I had people pick me up and dust me off and I learned a lot of stuff. And the tools and resources that companies provide are really critical too. And just more examples of that, I think about a 360 I got when I first started managing, where I learned a lot about how I communicated and things that I needed to be conscious of. And when I validated it with friends,
is it?
Oh my gosh. I would do a lot of things I didn't realize, that I validated it with friends. And I remember going on a hike and asked my friend Tim, I was like, hey, got this feedback. And isn't that funny? And he's like, you do that all the time.
What? Why did you tell me that before?
I was like, what are you talking about, man? And it was just like, oh, I've got a lot to work on.
Yeah.